Welcome to Heart Story Channel, a place where real emotions, deep memories, and unforgettable moments come alive through powerful storytelling. Every tale here is created to touch your soul, warm your heart, and remind you of the love that never fades, even when the people we love are no longer beside us. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for letting these stories become a part of your own journey. Alina woke up early that morning, long before the sun stretched its first golden rays across the quiet sky. The world outside her window felt peaceful, but inside her chest a storm of emotions churned gently, the kind that arrives on days meant for joy yet are shadowed by longing. She lay still for a moment, listening to the silence of her room, letting herself breathe deeply because she already knew today would not be easy. Today was supposed to be a celebration, the kind she had worked years for. Yet even as she felt proud of everything she had achieved, her heart carried a weight that refused to lift. The house was slowly waking up. She could hear faint footsteps in the hallway, the soft clinking of dishes in the kitchen, her mother trying her best to keep herself busy to hide her own emotions. It was always like this on days that mattered. Her mother smiled wider, spoke brighter, moved faster, as if movement and noise could distract from the empty space that followed them everywhere. A space shaped exactly like the man they both missed. The man who should have been here. The man whose absence felt louder on days like today. Alina sat up, running her fingers through her hair, steadying herself as memories pushed into her mind uninvited. Her father's laugh, the warmth in his eyes, the way he always encouraged her, the way his hand rested on her shoulder when he told her he believed in her more than anything. Every memory felt like a gift and a wound at the same time. She whispered to herself that today would be okay, even though she did not fully believe it. She slowly got ready, slipping into the clothes she had chosen the night before. Each movement felt delicate, as if she were afraid of breaking something invisible around her. When she finally stepped into the living room, her mother looked up at her, a soft smile stretching across her face. It was a proud smile, a brave smile, but behind it was that familiar glimmer, the one that came when joy and grief collided inside a heart that missed someone too deeply. Her younger brother teased her the way siblings do, trying to lighten the air, but even he seemed more gentle today, aware of the silence that lived in the corners of the room. And then there was the chair, his chair, placed near the window, untouched but never forgotten. No one sat in it. No one moved it. It was the only place in the house that felt like a memory carved into wood. Every time Alina walked past it, it felt like she was walking past a doorway to yesterday. They left the house together, sitting in the car while sunlight finally spilled across the road. The drive was quiet but comforting. Her mother's hand rested over hers, squeezing gently from time to time. It wasn't a question, it was a language of its own. The kind mothers speak without words. When they arrived at the ceremony, people were buzzing with excitement. Graduates laughed, posed for photos, shouted each other's names. Alina watched them, smiling politely, but inside she carried her tenderness like something fragile. As she walked across the campus, every step reminded her that he should have been beside her, reminding her to breathe, reminding her not to trip, reminding her that this moment was theirs as much as hers. She lifted her face to the sky for a brief second, feeling the warmth of the sun, imagining it was his approval shining down on her. When her name was finally called, she walked up to receive her diploma, each step slow but steady. The applause felt like waves crashing around her, and yet in the middle of that sound she heard something else, something only her heart could hear, the echo of the hands that were no longer there to clap for her. She felt tears pushing at the back of her eyes, but she held them, not because she wanted to hide them, but because she wanted to stay in that moment, to breathe it fully. As the diploma touched her hands, she heard her father's voice in her heart, soft, familiar, and full of pride, the voice she had missed more than she ever admitted aloud. After the ceremony, her family hugged her tightly. People congratulated her, asked her about her plans, took pictures with her, and she smiled through it all. She was genuinely grateful for every person who celebrated with her, but she couldn't ignore the emptiness that followed her like a shadow. Happiness felt incomplete without the person she wished she could show it to most. Hours later, when they returned home and everyone finally drifted into their evening routines, Alina stepped outside into the quiet backyard. The air was cooler now, the sky painted in shades of violet and soft blue. She sat on the old wooden bench, the one her father used every morning when he drank his tea, read the news, or simply sat in silence appreciating the start of a new day. She held her diploma in her lap, tracing her fingers over the letters of her name, feeling both proud and hollow at the same time. She looked up at the sky, where the first stars were emerging one by one, as if lighting up just for her. Her breath trembled as she whispered, barely loud enough for even the wind to hear, "I hope you're proud of me." The words carried years of love, longing, and quiet strength. She closed her eyes, and in that moment she felt something, a warm breeze brushing against her cheeks, gentle and soft, as though someone had leaned down to embrace her from a world she could no longer see. A tear rolled down her face, but she didn't wipe it away. Instead, she let it fall freely, because it wasn't a tear of sadness alone. It was a tear of love, of memory, of connection that loss could never fully erase. The emptiness inside her did not disappear, but for the first time that day it felt less like pain and more like a reminder. A reminder of a bond that life had ended but love had not. She sat there for a long time, letting the evening wrap around her, letting the silence become comforting instead of heavy. She realized that missing someone does not mean they are gone from your life. Missing someone is the way the heart continues to hold on, continues to honor, continues to love. She understood that her father would always be a part of every joy, every achievement, every new chapter she walked into. Not because he was physically present, but because love does not vanish when a life ends. It remains, steady and quiet, like stars guiding a traveler through the night. She whispered into the sky again, softer this time, "Thank you for everything." The breeze responded once more, warm and reassuring. And for the first time that day, she smiled with a different kind of smile, not the polite one, not the forced one, but the true one. The smile of someone who understood that love is eternal, that presence extends beyond life, and that even on the happiest days, it is okay to ache, to remember, to feel. She stood up from the bench, holding her diploma close to her heart, and walked back into the house with steps that felt lighter than before. The day had been beautiful and painful, joyful and aching, a mixture of emotions woven together into a memory she would carry forever. And in that mixture, in that imperfect beauty, she felt something peaceful settle inside her. She would continue forward, she would achieve more, she would live her life fully. Not despite the absence, but because love had shaped her into someone strong enough to carry both joy and sorrow in the same breath. And she knew, with a certainty that felt like a hand resting gently on her shoulder, that her father would always walk with her through every tomorrow. The night settled softly around the house, and as the lights inside dimmed, Alina stayed awake longer than usual. She sat at the edge of her bed, gently running her fingers over the diploma that still lay on her blanket, as if touching the paper made everything feel more real. Her room felt quiet, almost sacred, filled with memories of the past and dreams of the future, both meeting in one fragile moment. She remembered how her father used to peek into her room late at night just to make sure she was sleeping peacefully. Sometimes he would sit on the floor beside her bed, whispering stories he never finished, telling her she was capable of more than she knew. Those memories flooded her mind like a warm wave, reaching places in her heart she didn't touch often. She closed her eyes, leaning back against her pillows, letting those memories play out like gentle scenes. The softness of his voice, the patience in his smile, the way he always found the right words to calm her fears. She wondered if he knew how much she still needed him. Not in the way a child needs a parent, but in the way a heart needs its compass, its steady guide. The thought made her chest tighten, but she breathed through it, letting the ache come and go like a tide. Later, she got up and opened the small wooden box on her shelf. Inside were letters her father had written to her over the years. Some were birthday letters, some were for exam days, and some were simply reminders that he loved her. She pulled out one she had read many times but never grew tired of. The ink had faded in places, and the edges were slightly worn. As she unfolded the paper, she felt a familiar sense of comfort wrap around her. The words reminded her of mornings filled with promise and evenings filled with laughter. She read the letter slowly, savoring each line. He wrote about how proud he was even when she was still small, how he knew she would accomplish great things, how he believed she would carry her kindness into the world no matter how many storms she faced. He wrote that life would test her, push her, even break her at times, but she must always remember that love would rebuild what was shattered. And that he would always be with her, even long after she no longer saw him. She held the letter close to her chest, feeling its warmth like a heartbeat. Sleep finally came, soft and quiet, carrying her through the night. In her dreams she saw him again, standing under the old oak tree in their backyard. His face looked peaceful, his smile familiar. He didn't speak, he didn't need to. He simply opened his arms, and she walked into them, feeling the embrace she had missed for years. She woke up with tears on her cheeks, but instead of pain, she felt a strange calmness inside her. Dreams had a way of giving the heart exactly what it needed, even if only for a moment. The next morning, sunlight filled the kitchen as Alina helped her mother prepare breakfast. They moved quietly, each absorbed in their thoughts, but there was a gentle harmony in the air, a shared understanding that didn't require words. Her mother placed a cup of tea in front of her, the same way her father used to, and for a second the gesture felt like a bridge connecting past and present. Alina smiled softly, appreciating the small ways love continued living through everyday moments. After breakfast she stepped outside into the garden, letting the morning breeze brush against her face. The air smelled of fresh grass and blooming flowers. She walked to the wooden bench again, sitting down in the spot her father loved. She traced her fingers over the grain of the wood, imagining him sitting there with his newspaper and a cup of tea, humming softly to himself. The memory made her smile and ache at the same time. She took a deep breath and let her thoughts drift toward the future. There was so much ahead of her, new paths, new challenges, new reasons to be proud. But she also knew that every milestone would carry his memory with it. Every success would feel incomplete without him, yet every step forward would also honor him. It was a bittersweet balance she was learning to live with. Her phone buzzed with messages from friends asking about her plans, inviting her to celebrate. She appreciated their enthusiasm, but she felt a different kind of day calling her, one filled with quiet reflection rather than noise. So she stayed outside a little longer, breathing in the stillness, collecting her thoughts, letting the pieces of her emotions settle gently. She spent the afternoon helping her mother with chores, laughing occasionally at small jokes, feeling moments of lightness between the heaviness. Her brother kept dropping silly comments and making faces just to make her smile, and she loved him all the more for it. Even though her father was gone, she realized she was not alone. Love still surrounded her, just in different forms. Later that evening, the three of them sat together in the living room, reminiscing softly. Her mother shared a story she had never heard, how her father stayed up the night before her first day of school because he was too nervous to sleep. Her brother recalled the time their father tried to fix the kitchen sink and flooded half the room while insisting he knew what he was doing. They laughed, and tears glistened in their eyes, but the room felt full in a way it hadn't in a long time. Remembering him didn't hurt as sharply anymore. It felt like inviting him back into the room for a moment. When the night grew quiet again, Alina stepped outside one last time before bed. The sky was clear, dotted with stars that shimmered like tiny pieces of hope scattered across the darkness. She looked up at them, feeling a connection she couldn't explain but didn't question. She whispered into the cool air that she would keep going, that she would keep growing, and that she carried his love in everything she did. Then she turned to go inside, closing the door softly behind her, ready to face tomorrow with a heart that still ached, but also a heart that knew how to shine through the ache. The next morning arrived with soft light slipping through the curtains, waking Alina gently from sleep. She stretched slowly, feeling a mixture of calm and heaviness settle inside her. The events of the past 2 days lingered in her mind, her graduation, the memories, the emotions that rose and fell like waves. She touched the edge of her pillow, noticing a faint dampness from the tears she hadn't realized she shed in her sleep. But instead of sadness, she felt a quiet acceptance. Grief had a way of living alongside joy, weaving itself into the fabric of life in ways that became both painful and strangely beautiful. She walked into the kitchen where her mother was already preparing breakfast. Her mother looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from a heart carrying too many memories, but she still greeted her with a soft smile. Alina poured herself some tea, the same way her father taught her to, slowly, patiently, letting the aroma rise before taking a sip. She had always admired how her father found meaning in small moments like this. Even tea had a story, he used to say. Even morning silence had something to teach. After breakfast, she stepped outside to the garden again. It had become her sanctuary in these days, a place where she could breathe without pretending. Birds chirped from the trees, their soft melodies blending with the gentle rustling of leaves. She sat on the wooden bench, closing her eyes, letting the warmth of the morning sun rest against her face. She whispered to herself that today she would take a step forward, even if it was a small one. Her thoughts drifted to the future, to the plans she had been putting off. She had been accepted into a program she dreamed of, but part of her hesitated, afraid to move too far from the memories of home, afraid that moving forward might feel like leaving her father behind. The idea of stepping into a world where he would never see her achievements, never walk beside her, weighed heavily on her heart. But she reminded herself that love didn't disappear with distance or time. Love stayed, and because of that, she could move forward without losing him. Later that day, she found an old photo album tucked away in the living room cabinet. She carried it to the couch and opened it slowly, page by page. Pictures of her as a baby, her father holding her with a tenderness that radiated through the photographs. Pictures of birthdays, family outings, small celebrations, evenings spent in the backyard. She smiled at some, laughed at others, and paused on a few longer than the rest. One photo showed her sitting on her father's shoulders, both of them smiling as if the world held nothing but joy. She touched the photo lightly, feeling a sting in her chest, but she didn't look away. Her mother sat down beside her, leaning close to see the pictures. They spoke softly about each memory, filling the room with warmth. Her mother shared stories behind the photos, little details Alina never knew. How her father used to sing her to sleep with songs he made up on the spot. How he would get nervous before every school performance she had, pacing around the house trying to look calm. How he insisted on taking pictures even when no one else wanted to because he believed memories were treasures, not moments to rush through. Hearing these stories made Alina realize something she hadn't fully understood before. Her father had lived his life cherishing every moment with his family. He wanted them to have memories to hold onto, to comfort them when he couldn't. He had unknowingly prepared them for a future without him, though he never planned it that way. The thought filled her eyes with tears, but her heart with a kind of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. Hours passed, and the day unfolded quietly. In the evening, Alina went to her room and opened her journal. She hadn't written in it in months, but today she felt the need to put her thoughts into words. She wrote about the memories she revisited, about the things she wished she could say to her father, about the courage she needed for the next steps in her life. Writing made her feel lighter, as if each word released a piece of the heaviness she carried. That night, she lay in bed thinking about how loss had shaped her. It had hurt her deeply, but it had also softened parts of her soul, making her more aware of the world around her, more grateful for small kindnesses, more compassionate toward others who carried invisible pain. She realized that grief wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a sign of love. A love so strong that even death couldn't erase it. She closed her eyes, thinking of her father's smile, his gentle voice, the way he used to whisper encouragement when she doubted herself. She allowed herself to imagine him sitting beside her, telling her that she was strong enough, brave enough, capable enough to move forward. She let that imagined presence fill her heart until the ache softened. As she drifted toward sleep, she whispered into that she missed him, that she loved him, and that she would carry his memory with her into every tomorrow. Sleep took her gently, holding her in a space where love and loss coexisted peacefully, reminding her that healing didn't mean forgetting. Healing meant remembering with more love than pain. The next day carried a gentle quietness, the kind that made the world feel slower and softer. Alina woke with the sunlight warming her face, and for a moment she lay still, letting herself enjoy the calm before her thoughts began their familiar patterns. She reached for her phone but paused halfway, deciding instead to sit with the silence a little longer. She had spent so much of her life rushing, planning, studying, doing, yet grief had taught her that stillness also held meaning. It was in the still moments that she felt closest to him. She got dressed slowly and made her way to the kitchen where her mother was preparing tea. Her mother looked up with a smile that carried warmth and a hint of the sadness they both shared. They didn't talk much at first, they didn't need to. The clinking of cups, the whistle of the kettle, the soft steps around the kitchen formed a quiet symphony that felt comforting. After a while, her mother asked gently if she wanted to visit the cemetery that afternoon. Alina nodded without hesitation. She had been thinking about it for days, but she had waited until it felt right. Before leaving the house, she went to her room and packed a small bag. She placed the photo she had held the night before inside, along with a letter she had written but never sent, and a single white rose she had kept in a glass of water by her window. She touched the petals softly, then zipped the bag closed, feeling a mixture of heaviness and peace. The drive to the cemetery was quiet. Her mother kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other resting gently against her leg, a touch that said she understood everything without needing explanations. The road was familiar, lined with trees that whispered softly as they passed. Alina looked out the window, remembering all the times her father had driven them down this same road. She could almost hear him humming to the music on the radio, tapping the steering wheel gently in rhythm, laughing when someone sang off-key. When they arrived, the wind blew lightly, brushing against her face as though welcoming her. She walked slowly across the grass, her steps steady but filled with emotion. When she reached the grave, she stood still for a long moment, as if her heart needed time to prepare itself. She knelt down, placing the white rose carefully against the stone. Her fingers traced the carved letters of his name, feeling the familiar sting behind her eyes, but she didn't try to stop the tears that came. She whispered softly that she missed him. She told him everything she had done in the past days, everything she had felt, and everything she hoped for. She talked about her graduation, about the pride she wished she could have seen in his eyes, about the dreams she was building slowly. She talked as if he were sitting in front of her, listening the way he always used to, patience in his expression, love in his silence. Her mother knelt beside her, placing her own hand gently on the stone. Together they shared memories, small ones and big ones, laughing softly at some and pausing longer on others. The air around them felt warm despite the mild breeze, as if the space itself held some leftover tenderness from the past. They stayed like that for a long time, letting their grief breathe, letting their love stretch back across the years. When Alina opened her bag, she took out the letter she had written. She unfolded it with care, the words trembling slightly in her hands. She read it aloud, her voice soft and steady. It was a letter filled with gratitude, with longing, with the quiet hope of a heart still learning how to heal. When she finished, she folded it again and slipped it beneath the flower, letting the paper rest against the stone like a whispered promise. As she stood up, she felt lighter, as though she had set down something she had been carrying for too long. Not the weight of grief, but the weight of unspoken words. The breeze brushed her hair again, warm and gentle, and for a moment she felt a closeness she couldn't explain. Perhaps love really did linger in places where hearts were broken. Perhaps presence didn't disappear just because life did. On the drive back home, she leaned her head against the window, watching the world pass by in soft blurs of green and gold. She felt different, calmer, steadier, more connected. She realized that visiting his grave didn't reopen old wounds. Instead, it stitched together parts of her heart that had been waiting for acknowledgement. Grief was not something she wanted to escape anymore. It was something she wanted to understand. When they returned home, she went straight to the backyard and sat on the bench again. The evening sun painted the sky with gentle colors, and she watched as the shadows grew longer across the grass. She thought about how every day blended joy and sorrow in different measures. Some days tilted toward beauty, others toward pain, but both belonged to the same life. Both belonged to her. She tucked her legs beneath her and let the quiet wrap around her like a soft blanket. She thought about her future, not with fear this time, but with a kind of tender determination. She wanted to make him proud, but not out of pressure. Out of love, out of gratitude, out of the understanding that life was precious precisely because it did not last forever. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply, feeling the world settle around her. The ache in her chest remained, but it was no longer a sharp pain. It was something else now. Something warm, something living, a reminder, a connection, a gentle echo of the love that shaped her. When you're ready, say. The following week unfolded slowly, each day blending into the next with gentle familiarity. Alina found herself moving through her routines with a little more clarity, a little more steadiness. She woke earlier, breathed deeper, and felt the world around her with a sensitivity she hadn't noticed before. Grief had opened something inside her, a quiet awareness of how fragile and beautiful every moment was. Even the smallest things, the smell of morning air, the soft warmth of sunlight through her window, the sound of her mother humming in the kitchen, felt meaningful in ways she couldn't quite explain. She spent more time sitting in the backyard, letting herself think, remembering her father, imagining how he would react to the smallest updates in her life. She wondered if he would still tease her about her messy handwriting, if he would still insist that she eat breakfast even on mornings she felt too busy. She smiled at the thought of him reminding her not to overthink everything, trying to calm her anxieties in the way only he could. These memories felt like threads tying her heart gently to the past, not holding her back but giving her something soft to lean on. One evening, as the sky darkened into shades of purple and blue, she stood at her window and looked out at the stars. They shimmered softly, scattered across the sky like tiny pieces of hope. She had always believed that people she loved lived somewhere among them, not in a physical sense, but in the glow, in the quiet presence, in the places the heart searched when it felt lonely. She imagined her father watching over her, proud of how she carried herself even on the days she felt lost. She imagined him smiling, telling her she was stronger than she knew. The next morning, she received an email confirming her acceptance into the program she had dreamed of. For a moment she just stared at the screen, the words blurring slightly as her breath caught. It was the opportunity she had worked toward for so long, yet now that it was real, she felt a rush of emotions she wasn't prepared for. Joy, yes, excitement, of course, but also that aching absence, the one that reminded her he wouldn't be here to see her take this step. She whispered to herself that she wished she could share the news with him. She walked into the living room where her mother and brother were sitting. When she told them, they lit up with excitement, wrapping her in proud hugs and warm congratulations. Their joy filled the room, touching her deeply. She felt the emotion swell in her chest, and she smiled through it, grateful for the love around her. Her mother's eyes shimmered with both happiness and something bittersweet, knowing exactly who was missing from this moment. Later in the day, after the noise of congratulations faded, Alina went back to the wooden bench in the yard. She held the acceptance letter in her hands, the paper trembling slightly from the breeze. She read it again, imagining how her father would have reacted. She could almost hear him cheering, telling her that he always knew she would make it. She closed her eyes and let the tears slip down her cheeks, not out of sadness, but because the moment was too big, too full, too connected to both the past and the future. She whispered softly that she was scared. Scared to leave home, scared to start new chapters, scared to grow without him physically there. But she also whispered that she was ready. Ready to continue, ready to move forward, ready to honor everything he taught her. She let herself cry until the tears slowed, leaving behind a gentle That night she sat with her mother at the kitchen table. They talked for hours about the plans ahead, dorms, classes, travel, the small details that were both exciting and overwhelming. Her mother promised that they would figure everything out together. Her brother teased her about forgetting them as soon as she became busy, and she laughed, swatting his arm playfully. After they all went to sleep, Alina stayed awake a little longer, writing in her journal. She wrote about the fear, the excitement, the memories, the emotions that seemed to live in every corner of her heart. She wrote about her father and how she hoped he was proud of her. She wrote until her hand grew tired and her thoughts became softer. When she closed her journal, she held it against her chest for a moment, breathing deeply. She turned off the light, lay down on her bed, and stared at the faint glow of the stars outside her window. She thought about how far she had come, how much she had overcome, how much love she carried with her. She thought about her father, not with the sharp sting of heartbreak but with a warm, steady affection that filled her from the inside. She whispered into the darkness that she would keep going. She would live fully. She would cherish every moment. She would carry him with her, not in sorrow, but in strength. She let her eyes close gently, letting the quiet embrace her. Sleep came like a soft tide, pulling her into a dream where love lived quietly, endlessly, in the spaces between memory and tomorrow.